Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcasts co-production recorded on a Wagbical country. And I pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show.
There's a lot of things, like a lot of prizes for unpublished manuscripts, but it's to get to the stage of having an unpublished manuscript is a massive feat in itself.
Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you are looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, author of When Men Cry and your host for today's show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoy this show, or indeed any other shows on the Words and Nerds platform, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review, wherever you are listening. Thank you for listening to us and for supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Today, I'm joined by Michelle See-Tho, who is a freelance writer and copywriter. She's had articles and works published in Kill Your Darlings, Meanjin, Overland, and the Big Issue Fiction Edition. However, we're here today to talk about her debut novel, Jade and Emerald, which is published by Penguin Random House and also was the recipient of the 2023 Penguin Literary Prize. I started off by asking Michelle about her experience of writing the book, but also about the incredible honour of picking up such a prestigious literary prize. Michelle, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Hi, it's good to be here. I am speaking to you from Boonwurrung land.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that I get to talk to you about this beautiful book that you have written, Jade and Emerald. And before I begin, and before we dive headlong into this story, I just want to highlight a flex that you have, which is the fact that this book, or this manuscript, won the 2023 Penguin Literacy Prize. First up, congrats. That is a very amazing, prestigious, crazy award to win and pick up. Does it pinch yourself? Do you pinch yourself a little bit the moment that you won that award? But not only that, this manuscript that you picked, that you won, is now about to come out and be in the hands of readers.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very, very kind of you. I do, yeah. Because I suppose for a while I had been, when I had first written the manuscript, I had been pitching it out to a bunch of places. I don't even know how many. I've lost count of the amount of rejections. So when I got shortlisted for the Penguin Literary Prize, I didn't really kind of I was in a lot of shock about it because I just didn't expect it.
It's imposter syndrome.
Even when I entered it, I was just like, oh, here's another prize that's going to reject me.
It's so true. And it's I think every author has to have that. It's very more often the case than not that you have that rite of passage of applying and submitting your manuscript to 100 places and everyone going, no. Yeah. And then out of nowhere, someone says yes, out of nowhere, and then it's just 100 miles an hour. Insanity.
Yeah, and it happens when you least expect it as well, because some of the time you'd be really hanging your hopes on something and then it wouldn't happen. Yeah. Winning it was absurd as well, because I thought being shortlisted was amazing, but I was like, that's going to be where it ends. And I happened to be freelancing in an office when I got an email from Meredith Kono at Penguin Random House saying, oh, can you call me? And for the whole rest of the meeting, I was not at all paying attention because I was just I have to go and call Meredith. And I went outside to call her, and then she was like, oh, I wanted to talk to you because you won the Penguin Prize. And I was I couldn't say anything because I was in shock.
Yeah, I imagine like picking that up in a meeting that you'd be like, this is the longest meeting in my entire life now, because
It
now I'm just however it has come together, it results in this gorgeous, amazing book that I think you should be super proud of straight off by the bat. It's really an incredible story. And we always like to start these podcasts with the classic elevator pitch. And I know that this is your first audio podcast. So it's always like, some people are down with it off the bat. Some people are like, let's try and nail this. So I want you to hit me with it. What is, for our listeners, the 1 minute pitch for Jade and Emerald?
Jade and Emerald is the story of Lei Ling Wen. She's a lonely and bored preteen girl. Then she meets Gigi Nu, who's the socialite aunt of her classmate. And the two of them form an unlikely bond, but that further strains her relationship with her mother, who's already very strict, and they already kind of have quite a tense relationship.
Great. Nailed it. Whoa, jeez. I always love it when it's like straight to the point. Bam. There is so much to digest and unpack in this book, which I love, first and foremost. There's always like the small little threads and ideas that come through. And the first thing is that it's very much a story about it's the migrant experience set within the framework of a coming-of-age story, which I feel like we haven't seen enough of. I mean, we've been exposed. There is a lot more. There's a lot more storytelling and perspectives coming out. You know, we've seen it in the last couple of years coming out of Southeast Asia, Chinese, Malaysian storytellers with incredible books. I mean, we had one recently last year called The Albatross, which came out, which was around the framework of a romance story, and then of course there's a lot of massive movies out there, like, of course, Crazy Rich Asians, which went everywhere, within a different context. But a coming-of-age story, immediately I was very much drawn to this, particularly around this experience, the contrasting experience that Gigi and Liling kind of come into when they meet each other. Please tell me about, like, I got the sense that you were really touching on some real personal stuff here with this migrant experience, but also just the contrast of the family and also trying to fit into the world that is Australia, which often can be a very hard line to straddle for many people who arrive in Australia.
You know, kind of there's the main sort of touch points of like Lei Ling sort of trying to fit in at school, the very basic things like people getting her name wrong or being bullied for what she looks like, then the foods that they eat as well, which are the sort of connection that the mother brings from Malaysia. So yeah, pretty much all the food is like Chinese Malaysian that she cooks at home. Then there's also kind of the contrast between Lei Ling and Angela, because Angela is also a Chinese Malaysian background, but she's popular, like everybody at school loves her. She's revered for, I guess, what they think is exotic. And like meanwhile Lei Ling's bullied. So it's kind of like I guess I felt like it was kind of an interesting contrast to do that, where like it's not like blatantly, you know, that people are racist. It's that like there's some people fit in better than others, like even when you're from the same background.
Well, that I found that contrast immediately straight off the bat really, really interesting, or even down to the fact that around names was very interesting. I mean, Angela and the name that she had, that everyone calls her or refers to her as, compared to Lei Ling, even immediately, I think says so much, which is about, you know, it's about, well, there's a particular environment and you fit in this particular environment in a certain way, shape or form. And it no wonder Lei Ling feels so lonely, And you really capture that beautifully. Just you are really rooting for her in this story because she's just yearning for that sense of connection and belonging, but also not just the fact that she is very much tied to a family that is very much holding on to those important traditions and values, and it comes through in everything, in the relationship at home, in the food, in the way they speak to one another, and then it contrasts insanely with this world of fitting into Australian society and that world. And normally I like to dive in like to characters separately, but in this particular book I have to kind of be a little bit different because the dynamic that Li-Ling has with her mother and the family dynamic at home is very different to what happens when she meets Gigi. Because Gigi kind of she kind of sees, she's very much in this glamorous world of kind of wealthy Australia, and her decision to kind of adopt Li-Ling, like kind of as a protege and as someone that she can take under her wing. I just found that contrast so interesting. First of all, tell me a little bit about Gigi, because she's a really important part of this story. But why did it feel like she was such a valuable lens to expose Li-Ling to this particular world that you wanted to encapsulate?
Well, Gigi, I guess, she is that kind of crazy rich Asian, so-called.
I know it feels like such a stereotype to boil it down to crazy rich Asians, but it's so fascinating just seeing the examination of that world.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is true that in Malaysia there is kind of a subset of people who are uber wealthy, and then of course like the gap between rich and poor is very wide, and so we do kind of have that with like between Gigi and the mother, and Li-Ling even says at one point that like Gigi's description of Malaysia doesn't fit her mother's description of Malaysia because just that their two experiences are just different, and I mean that's probably true for a lot of countries. It's just that so there was that kind of contrast between the two women and their approaches to life. So Gigi believes that life is for living and for excitement, while the mother is kind of like she is just working to survive because she's sort of been struggling. She's a single mom. She had to raise Li-Ling by herself in a country where she didn't really speak the language. She didn't know anyone. And so, she's kind of holding down like two jobs, sort of trying to, make the best of her life here because like she believed that she would have a better life in Australia and that her daughter would have a better life in Australia.
The mindset of the two women, I think, is very telling of the backgrounds that they come from. Because this was another thought because we have this contrast through the lens of Li-Ling. Gigi has the permission to, like you say, say life is for living and life is growing because she has grown up in an environment of plenty, and grown up in an environment very much where if you want it, you can get it. If you want it, you can have it, which is completely at contrast to the family dynamic that Li-Ling has at home. Tell me a little bit about her mother, because and also particularly this very particular mother-daughter relationship that I think you encapsulate very clearly here. Is as much as it is a relationship filled with lots of tension and examinations of power dynamics, and very much framed within the context of the culture that the mother has come from. There is also a beauty to it and a very strong love.
Oh, I'm really glad that comes across because that's kind of what I was trying to do with the book. So that's really nice to hear. I guess the mother is very, very strict on Li-Ling, is kind of like sort of one of the first impressions that we have of her, that, you know, she doesn't, like, she sort of puts a time limit on her daughter to go to a party. She's, you know, she takes away all her toys, that she doesn't let her kind of go out with her friends after school or anything like that. She's very strict, and that's kind of, that does come from, like, the Malaysian mindset, like, you know, kind of hard work. And it's also a migrant mindset of, like, you know, like, I've picked up, like, my entire life and brought you to, like, another country. That, like, you kind of have to, like, make use of it. Like, yeah, like, that her mother has, like, sacrificed so much for her. But I think obviously Lei Ling doesn't see it that way, but like, what the mother wants is for her to kind of, like, make the most of the life that she's trying to build for her.
There's no safety net. There's also that there's kind of the,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not in a situation where you are surrounded by family. You're in a different country with a lot of people that you don't know, and so you are naturally going to be not just a lot more protective, but a lot more making sure that you recognize that you are like a rung on a ladder, and your and the aim is to make your child be in a higher place, in a higher position, in a better, more comfortable place to enjoy their life more than you can with yours. That is the priority. But of course, how that comes across, it can be, yeah, it can often be at a detriment to Lei Ling, because it means that it is just such a rigid environment that allows no room necessarily for play or for at a time, of course, as we say, bringing it back to what this is about, really much a coming-of-age growing story where she is coming into her own as a young woman. There is a part of this story which kind of leads quite nicely onto this, which is, I want to keep this as spoiler-free as I can, because the ending, like later in the story, there is a big, something very big happens, and I think it's a great examination of, I don't know, maybe if it's just come at a point in my own life where my parents are getting older, and you start to examine, you start to ask more questions as you become an adult yourself about what your parents got up to before you came along, and what was the world of because they're just human beings like you, and you realize that, you know, as you're getting closer to, you know, having a family of your own, or, you know, getting partners, doing whatever, starting a career, that oh yeah, they were just like winging it like me, or doing whatever like me. And I like what you did here as more revelations come to light, that you examine the world. Like many children, when you're young, you don't even think that your parents were just always there, and you never thought that they actually had a whole life before you came along. You don't even question it. It's just like, mum is there, dad is there, whoever is there, and you never think about it. And I love that that Lei Ling has to examine this, and even so, you do it still through the lens of the fact that she's still a child. She is still growing up.
Yeah, this is a really great question. I think that most people look at parents and like you say, that they've just always been there. And I think people tend to see their parents as like, you know, they're there, they exist only to like serve us. And then like, you know, we don't kind of understand them as like people, we just see them as parents. There's a quote from Friends. Rachel says, "Why can't parents just stay parents? Why do they have to become people?" And yeah, and I did kind of really like enjoy kind of exploring like the mother as being this whole person outside of her life with her daughter. But I guess because the book is from Lei Ling's perspective, you only kind of see like the snippets and then what her mother tells her. So, you know, it's all like filtered through the lens of Lei Ling kind of not really understanding why her mother is behaving in certain ways. Like she doesn't really kind of get those nuances. And then, as I say, we will keep it spoiler free, but in that moment, it's a big shock for her.
Yeah. It's just a great part of the story, and again, long and the short, the answer is for all the listeners, go read the book. We want you to be spoiled. But as a kind of a final question on this, and this is more purely, instead of talking about the story, it's more just my own curiosity leading me here. Did it make you reframe and look on your? I always find, particularly for authors, that writing a book is extraordinarily educational on particular subject matters, particular topics. And, instead of the boring question of what do you want readers to get out of this book, I always like say, go read the book and find out for yourself. What did the book teach you particularly, and on this particular endpoint about how we view parents and lives of parents and the fact that parents are their own human beings? What did this book teach you?
That is a good question. It's on the whole kind of just that, like, everyone, parents or not parents, just people are, kind of layered and nuanced, and there's always more to someone than you might think. So the way that somebody reacts, for example, the mother being extremely strict, or even like, in our kind of wider lives, like, people who react in certain ways to certain situations, there's pretty much always like a story behind it. There's always a reason. And like people, they don't just do things like for the sake of it. Yeah.
The subtext I always found off the back of it was sometimes there is the whole notion that you've got to grow up young or something quickly if something significant happens, or if you come from a certain background. The thing I really picked up about from this is sometimes that you can be, a young person who has lived and experienced a lot more than they probably could have or should have for someone of their age. But sometimes there is some things that you cannot fully understand until you have actually lived and experienced people. Was something that I really picked up from that. Because Liling has such a specific environment in this migrant setting, there is that can frame and paint you in so many certain ways at a time when you were growing up. But I think this whole other core part, not just with going back to Gigi with her lifestyle and her environment and the world that she's in, then bringing it back to the mother. I just realized, because when you're an adult, you have a different relationship with your parent, and you have a different connection with your parent, and sometimes you don't see that, and you cannot have that perspective until just time has passed, which I think is very interesting. And something really interesting to examine that I haven't, stopped to consider before, which is really great. That it's really great when a book does that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I think like that's quite interesting in the context of the book, because I guess Leiling has a lot of people keep telling her, "Oh, you'll understand when you're older. You'll understand when you're older," and she gets really sick of hearing it. But it is true. That a lot of things we just don't see them until we're older.
It's suddenly it makes more sense, because you then develop the tools to understand, which sometimes can only just come with time. I do want to keep poking about the book, but I also do want to ask a little bit about this creative writing experience, because, as alluded to earlier in the podcast, you wrote this manuscript, you were with this manuscript for a while, you submitted it to 100 million places, it wasn't successful, and then somehow out of nowhere Penguin said yes, and you won the Penguin Literacy Prize. And I always like hearing about how books come together, because it's never a silo, it never happens in isolation, it's a very collaborative process. But because I have someone who won a literacy prize, Lex, how did that influence the crafting of the actual story?
Well, I guess like maybe we should rewind a little bit because I mostly wrote the book through the Kill Your Darlings Mentors program.
Yes.
So shout out to my mentor Melanie Cheng because like I really don't think that this book would have existed without that program. It's so the way it works is like you get paired with a mentor and for 6 months you kind of work with them and you have like monthly deadlines to meet. So I think it's something like 10,000 words a month. And so like having those deadlines for one like really helped because I had to like write that amount. Like, it's pretty easy, especially like with novels, to like kind of procrastinate and not write because you don't have something like pushing you. So those deadlines really, really helped. But then also like the fact that I could kind of sit with Mel and talk to her about like the story and various plot points and like it definitely wouldn't exist in the form that it is now, like without her because I obviously had no idea what I was doing. And she was kind of like, oh, you should like shape it like this, like, novels kind of have like tend to have like this sort of trajectory. And like, and all of that kind of became like the book that it is. And so at the end of that mentorship, that manuscript was sort of what I was shopping around. And then, so as far as like the actual publication journey within Penguin, we sort of had like a structural edit. So structurally it hasn't changed too much because it's pretty linear. But one of the big things was that because it was set in 1999, I was trying to make it kind of realistic with like the time, would people have spoken like this at that time? Sort of what was happening in the like broader kind of like political landscape as well. Then like the more kind of micro things like making sure that her violin lessons were regular and that like her school schedule and that they had like things like term holidays at school and that sort of thing because it's set over like one school year. And then kind of after that we did the copy edit process where we were kind of like tightening like the sentence structure and the flow, and like a lot of what I learned was about avoiding repetition. So like apparently Layling used to mumble a lot, so I hope that like she's not mumbling as much now, or rather I've managed to find other ways of expressing that. But again, some really great people helped me out there. So Meredith Kerner and Melissa Lane at Penguin Random House, both excellent editors who were like absolutely integral to making the book like as polished and as I don't know, as literary as it is now.
Do you absolutely endorse things like the mentor, like the Kill Your Darlings mentorship, and what is the one thing I think you could say to someone like who probably has ever looked at that and gone, maybe I want to try it, or maybe I want to sit with this manuscript in my own headspace for a little while. What would you be, your one piece of advice to someone who might be considering, I've got this idea and I want to do it in the mentorship. What do I do?
I mean, I guess everyone is different, but I felt that the mentorship like really, really helped me because I didn't like. I'm a little bit of a procrastinator. I don't think I would have written for those deadlines.
It's true.
Like I don't think I really could have like put out that many words in that amount of time without it. And then also having someone who was like so deeply invested in your story and who knew like what you wanted to achieve and what your characters were doing and who really kind of cared about it as much as you do. Like, I think that, yeah, those things are really, really important. And I just, in general, don't feel that there are as many, I mean, I may be wrong, but I don't feel that there are as many kind of initiatives for, like, writing a manuscript. There's a lot of things, like a lot of prizes for, like, unpublished manuscripts, but it's like, to get to the stage of having an unpublished manuscript is a massive feat in itself.
Yes.
So I really endorse that program because I don't really know of many other things like it that kind of help you get to the point of having like a finished manuscript.
Like, I think it's the more I hear about mentorships, the more I'm like, far out, I should do that for my next book. God, because you could just pick up so much knowledge and experience through just sitting with authors who've just had more time in the saddle, and would be such a valuable skill set.
Yeah.
What is next for you? Is there another book? Is it just a case of seeing how this one goes? What will we see next?
I'd love to write another book. I guess I haven't really kind of sat down and kind of thought one out enough. Like, I guess I've got like some thoughts about like themes and things, but it's all very, very loose. And I am, of course, excited to see how Jade and Emerald goes. So I don't know if that will necessarily affect like whether or not I want to write another book, but it will just be an interesting experience, it being my first book and everything.
Well, I love that there's always that there's like something sitting there in the grey space that hasn't fully formed. It's like, oh, you're there again. I know.
Yeah.
That's how it feels. You again, waiting for you to come out of the mist and reveal yourself to me.
Yeah.
Whatever happens next, you should be super proud of this book. It's Jade and Emerald is fantastic, and so much to dig into and digest and examine. And I really think that readers will absolutely enjoy it. We'll finish off with a last section, which is what I like to call the rapid fire part of the podcast. So I just fling a bunch of questions at you, and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. One or two of them I have given you time to prepare for, which is, of course, around books. And the first question I want to ask you is, what is your favorite book that you have read in the last 12 months?
Yes, I did have to think about this a little bit because there are so many good ones. I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel.
Ooh.
She's British, I think. But yeah, it's in short, it's kind of a story of like a young woman who sort of has an affair with a married man. But there's also so much more to it than that. It's really like brutally honest satire about kind of the experience of being online, or like there's a lot of kind of internet stalking, and there's a lot of satire about kind of just like modern life. So yeah, things like kind of wokeness or like capitalism, or the appearance of that. We mold our lives to I don't know, fit Instagram.
I love cynical examinations of the online space. Having working in the online space, it is ripe for criticism. I will simply say it as that. What is your favorite debut novel that you have ever read? So we're talking across your entire life, someone who it was their very first book that they ever read, and you picked it up and went, holy hell, what is this?
Yeah, this is a really hard one as well. I might say Kokomo by Victoria Hen. Speaking of books with parents who had lives before they were parents.
Yes, very appropriate.
That kind of mother-daughter story where the mother's actions are explained by things that the daughter doesn't understand or doesn't know about. I think, the emotions in that book are so raw. And it's empathetic as well to kind of, anyone who's going through something. You really kind of get this insight into the characters.
It's a great book. It's a great book, Kakuma. It was all the buzz when it came out, and
it was
for good reason. It was a fantastic story. Do you have a favorite word?
Word?
A specific word.
I'm really not sure.
Well, we could reframe it and say, is there, for example, like in your book, there's always one word that you use too much and the editor probably says to you, dude, you got to take that out. Or you use it like so many times. Was there a particular example?
Well, yeah, as I said, there was a lot of mumbling. There was also a lot of flinching. Yeah, I do quite like the kind of expression of fear through like a flinch. So my editor was like, yeah, you've used this. Yeah, there is still some, but not as much as there was.
Oh, I love it, and also flinching. You can so much you can connect to it and do on that. And yes, Paul really does flinch a lot in this book.
Yeah.
There are so many. I love all of the increased. There's the more books coming out of, kind of not just based on the migrant experience, but coming out from authors from a migrant background. As mentioned, the Albatross, of course, yourself. Is there a particular writer, whether it be Chinese Malaysian background or someone else, that you have think everyone should really check this person out? You're sleeping on them.
Melanie Cheng, who's her background is she's from Hong Kong, but she mostly grew up in Australia as well. Like her writing is great. Alice Pung also.
Oh yes.
A lot of, lovely writing, and was literally the editor of the book called Growing Up Asian in Australia.
Yes, which you should read. That's a great book, actually. That's a really, really good book. I'll throw one as well into the mix, which is a Japanese writer, Miko Kawakami. She wrote Breasts and Eggs that came out in 2019, but it's just a really amazing story. And I've become obsessed with Japanese storytelling in the last 12 months, whether it be authors or through the other forms of it, like filmmaking, manga, whatever it may be. Just you check more of those writers out as well. They're also phenomenal. Do you have a favorite trope?
I do like the unlikely friendship kind of story. I also really love the old sad girl novel.
Sad girl novels work. They do.
Yeah,
they really do. They work for a reason. It's fire. Absolutely. And then last question. Obviously, growing up or coming of age stories have been done a lot. You have now completed one of your own. And I know you probably would have been familiar with a lot of other books that deal with that growing up and coming of age experience. Is there a part of that experience, now that you've kind of dove into the nooks and crannies of writing a story like that you think hasn't been covered, or something that should be re-examined or recontextualized?
I mean, I'm sure it probably does exist, but I would be interested in seeing, kind of a bit more of a migrant story that has like a more positive relationship with the parents, because they definitely do exist. But I do feel like a lot of the time it is kind of written as like parent versus child, but it would be nice to see more kind of it's like positive relationships.
It's hard to do that because often that tension is often so built on it. But maybe we should. Another idea, maybe a sequel. Yeah. I don't know how you'd weave that together, but woohoo! Michelle, this has been so much fun. Thank you for gifting us with this book, and thank you so much for coming on Date with a Debut. It has been a pleasure chatting to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut, and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show, or indeed any episode of Words and Nerds, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It is hugely appreciated. Catch you soon.